Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Genesis Invitational Initial Research Show. Boy, it was a very close call for yours truly this week. I did hit the top 10 on Jacob Bridgman, so that made it a decent week, I suppose. But very, very close on hitting the top 10 on Tom Hoge. He ends up parring the 18th on Sunday to fail to jump himself into the top 10. And Sepp Straka with his eagle on 18 puts himself in contention, tied with Minwoo Lee until Colin Morikawa birdies and wins the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. So a week of close calls. It ended up being a non-profitable week, but not one that is a total disaster. Again, played a lot of Jacob Bridgman, played a lot of Tom Hoge. I did mention Colin Morikawa that I was going to sprinkle him into some lineups, so wasn't all for naught, if you will, this week. And then we now look forward to the second straight signature event of the year. We're going back to famed Riviera Country Club in the Pacific Palisades for the Genesis Invitational. So would love to hear about how your week went and what you think of the Genesis Invitational. We have a lot to cover, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts. I'm continuously migrating over to the Rabbit Hole. It just takes a lot of time as I get comfortable and used to all of the information that is over there, presented in different ways than Fantasy National used to present it. And I will still go back and forth between Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole for the foreseeable future, but just want to make that very clear to you as the viewer that tonight and of course moving forward, both analytic sites are going to be used. So all statistics provided by Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole. Make sure you go check out the Rabbit Hole as they are merging or acquiring Fantasy National. Gives you all of the power at your fingertips to make the correct outright wagers and the strongest plays in DFS. Has everything that Fantasy National had, lineup optimizer, tournament simulator, everything about it. I've really enjoyed going to the Rabbit Hole and looking and messing around in there. So make sure you go check them out. As far as social media, my handle is in the description. If you want to see the weekly research that I normally do on the PGA Tour, I probably won't do anything for the Genesis and Riviera, considering as a quick reminder, the Genesis Invitational was not at Riviera last year. It was held at Torrey Pines. So in your week of research, make sure you keep that in mind, that the Genesis was not played at Riviera last year. And because of the change in the PGA structure, as far as signature events and all that stuff, we've only have 1 year of data as far as a signature field, limited cut event for the Genesis. That's right, this is a very limited cut, even though it is a signature event. Top 50 and ties are essentially a Masters cut this week at the Genesis. So probably won't post anything in terms of research over on social media, but like I said, normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I'm wagering with my own money and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. How did your waste management? Wow, I'm 2 weeks behind. How did your Pebble Beach go? Did you play all the Colin Morikawa? Did you play Minwoo Lee, who I did not play any Minwoo, so that certainly dampened my cap in terms of money made. Did you play Scotty? All of that. Jake Knapp, who played very well again. And then moving forward to the Genesis, what do you know of Riviera? How do you think it's going to play? Who's your early favorite this week? All of that. Put your thoughts and opinions into chat. If you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's do our initial research for the 2026 Genesis Invitational. We're going to start, as we always do, on a Sunday evening with the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Good evening, Try, and good evening, Turkey. thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciate it. I apologize if the lighting is a little bit weird this evening. I've had two light bulbs in my kind of camera setup, if you will, go out this week. And I am in the process of ordering the specific light bulbs that these cameras take. It takes some time, so I apologize if the lighting's a little bit weird. I just had to make do to make sure I had the lights on, if you will. Thanks for all you do. Much appreciated. Well, thank you, Tri. I really, really appreciate that. Hopefully you had a very successful Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Mine, like I said, was not a disaster. I had the top 10 on Jacob Bridgman, which paid. I really wish Tom Hoagie would have birdied the 18th and got himself into the top 10. That would have made it a fairly profitable week. Sepp Straka gave himself an outside chance, although Colin Morikawa was never really in danger of giving it away on 18 today. But again, very much appreciated, Try. I'm just thankful that you take some time out of your day to listen, whether that's live or catch the show, on your own in your free time. Very much appreciated. Turkey, Bridgman had our hearts in our throats. High drama, what a shot. I saw him on the beach on 18 and then hit it in the water when he tried to get himself back into play, and then hits a miracle shot. Well, not a miracle shot, but a fantastic shot to give himself the bogey putt to stay in the top 10. I mean, a great shot. You kind of think maybe you should have done that from the beginning, but hindsight's always 20/20. Cantley at the Riv all day, you say. I don't necessarily disagree. We'll get into that. Although I will be, forthright in the sense that I'm only going back, essentially 1 year to 2024, since that was the only year that we had a limited field no-cut event at the Genesis. Because again, remember, last year's event was played at Torrey Pines, not at Riviera. And while they are very similar courses, there are some differences between them as well. So, good evening, Hanka. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Rory might be a good play. I like how he finished the Pebble. Certainly, it'll be interesting because I don't know Rory's course history off the top of my head. We'll absolutely get into that. But definitely the way he played at Pebble leaves you with some confidence. Absolutely. But thanks, Hanka, for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. We turn our attention to the GCSAA tournament fact sheet and Riviera Country Club in the Pacific Palisades. Again, this tournament played at Torrey Pines last year due to the wildfires. Do I golf? Where I've never established an official handicap. To call myself a golfer is a disgrace to the game. I certainly get out there and whack it around a little bit. I'm probably being a little bit facetious. I'm not terrible. I'll shoot in the 80s. I've broken 80 once. So I'm not a complete hack. But certainly not to the level of some of the local pros or anything like that. I will contribute in scrambles. That's all I'll say. I can contribute in some scrambles. Generally hit my irons fairly well. Although I didn't play much last summer, so getting back into it this spring and summer will be a chore. Had Morikawa. Well, try. That's an awesome hit. 70 was an absurd number going Xander Hall. Well, let me mark that down. Try. And then I will make sure to give you the proper shout out you deserve in the intro tomorrow. So absolutely, Morikawa at 70. That's a great hit. Congratulations, Try. I've had one winner this year. I had Goddard up in the Waste Management, and like I said, I had a chance with Straka, but like I said, Morikawa he wasn't really in danger of giving that away on 18. So I will make sure to put a star to that and shout you out in the in the intro tomorrow. I keep saying try. It's trip to Pluto, but if you're okay with try, I'm gonna. It's kind of now stuck with me. But congratulations on your hit. Very, very impressive. That's gonna make for a very strong payday and a great start to 2026 as golf kind of ramps up. Now that football's over, golf kind of really takes over, especially in this time frame before baseball gets going. Yes, there's the NBA. I'm not much of an NBA guy. Maybe some people are, but really golf kind of starts to take over here. So that's a great way to add to your bankroll. Give yourself some leeway as the heart of the PGA Tour schedule starts really taking off. All right, like I said, I want to make sure I get through this. We're in the Pacific Palisades at famed Riviera Country Club. Originally a George Thomas design. It has been renovated several times over the years, most recently by Tom Fazio in 2008. A major renovation from Crenshaw and Core in 1992. Crenshaw and Core also the key designers of places like Kapalua. They've had their hands on many places or on the PGA Tour. In fact, going to the rabbit hole just very quickly, they've had their hands on enough that Core and Crenshaw is actually an architect filter that we can look at. So, yeah, we could definitely take a look at that if we wanted to. Riviera is a daunting task. Requires elite performance or strong performance in all four facets of your game. Off the tee with your irons, around the greens not easy here, and putting on these very tricky Poa annua greens. It is a brute of a golf course at close to 7,400 yards, 7,383 to be exact, as a standard or traditional par 71 with 4 par 3s and 3 par 5s. As I mentioned, the greens here are Poa annua. We have seen this a couple times now, most recently last week at Pebble Beach. We also saw this at Torrey Pines, specifically the South Course with Poa annua greens. So we're still going to be looking at Poa annua putting this week. And the interesting thing with Riv is that the fairways in the rough are Kikuyu. And Kikuyu, I'm not an agronomist. I just know enough of the basics. Kikuyu is a real sticky grass. It can be very difficult to play out of if you're not familiar with it. So might also be in our best interest to look at some Kikuyu fairways and things of that nature. Bunker fairways, fairway surface, Kikuyu. So we might want to look at some of that. It is it's a pretty rare surface, but if players aren't used to it, it can trip them up. Some other things about Riv, 7,500 square foot greens. These are very large greens. The average on the PGA Tour is about 6,000 square feet. So we are dealing with very large Poa annua greens. 37 acres of fairway seems pretty, seems like a lot. These fairways play much narrower than what you would think. There's a lot of undulation and slope in the fairways. The fairways are generally pretty firm, which means you get a lot of run out into runoff areas of rough and fairway bunkers. So the fairways are not easy to hit here. Several bunkers, most of which are protecting the landing area of the fairway. There's not a whole lot of bunkers protecting the greens. No water hazards, so very, very similar to Torrey Pines in that regard. Torrey only has the one water hazard protecting the 18th green. There are no water hazards around Riv. There is quite a bit of elevation, though. Probably most famously that 18th tee shot, where you are teeing up low and hitting up to the high ground to the fairway. It's a blind tee shot with a natural amphitheater green. Very, very famous hole. Good for viewing and etc. There's a lot of elevation changes throughout Riv as well. Looking at any kind of notes here, number 4 and number 18 teeing complex was restored. 2023, so the year before, some green contouring was restored. Again, last year's tournament was moved to Torrey due to the Palisades fire. So it doesn't look like there's been a whole lot of changes to the course since we last saw it in 2024, other than maybe the restored fourth tee and the rebuilding of the 18th teeing complex. So again, just very quickly, real quick overview here of Riviera. Originally George Thomas design, renovated most recently by Tom Fazio. A traditional, daunting par 71, almost 7,400 yards, large, very large, and generally pretty fast. Poa Annua greens, Kikuyu the rest of the way throughout the course. Fairways are misleading in terms of statistics. They will play much smaller than what they are listing at in terms of average width. And really the greens will play much smaller than this, as there are several false fronts, multi-tiered greens, quite a bit of undulation, if you will. So these greens don't play to their 7,500 square feet. So there's a look at the Genesis Invitational in terms of a GCSAA tournament fact sheet. We'll now go over to, let's go to the rabbit hole and bet spurts just very, very quickly. Take a look at the players in the field for the Genesis. I'm going to set this to the beginning of the year. Most players now have at least some amount of tournaments in them for the 2026 season. The notable exception, of course, Rory, Tommy Fleetwood, things of that nature. And, of course, Pebble's not loaded in here yet. So Siwoo's played 5 times. Gerard will have played 4. Scheffler have played 3, etc. Good evening, Echoes. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you had a very positive Pebble Beach. And if not, we're going to try and start getting on the right foot with the Genesis this week at famed Riviera. Thanks again for jumping in chat. Echoes, very good to see you. In terms of some overview that we might want to look at, let's take a look at some, we're going to say long, I think, because the rabbit hole lists Riv as long, par 71, 7,400 yards. Yeah, actually, in fact, before we go to the players here, again, apologies, trying to get used to how I want to structure my show with with both the Rabbit Hole and Fantasy National. So I ask that you bear with me a little bit on that, trying to get used to both of them. Let's actually come here to how the Rabbit Hole describes Riviera. A Parkland design. So it's one of the first types of courses we've seen Parkland so far at Riv. We've been mostly coastal, like YLI and the American Express is a resort course. This is one of the first Parkland designs that we've seen, although Torrey might also be Parkland now that I'm thinking about it. If we take a look, coastal, ocean, and Parkland. So yeah, but Riv being just Parkland. So if you want to take that into consideration, George Thomas and William Bell design, renovated by Fazio and Cord Crenshaw. We talked about how these greens are large. The rough is generally kept pretty short here, 2 inches. So it is not a huge deterrent for players to be in the rough. They would much rather be in the rough than the fairway bunkers at Riviera. Mixed off the tee club type, you will hit some drivers. You will lay up on a few holes, thinking most notably the risk reward drivable par 4 10th with that very, very narrow green. Players can get aggressive, hit driver, or maybe even 3-wood, or they can lay back and try and hit a little wedge into that green. It is very difficult to gain strokes off the tee around Riv. Hitting the fairway is generally pretty difficult, again, because of all the sloping the contouring that winds through a lot of the natural terrain in the Pacific Palisades. But there is a very low missed fairway penalty and a very low rough penalty. Difficult or average on approach, difficult to hit the greens, average around the green, and putting very, very difficult. Again, very fast greens generally. It says average here. Fantasy National would list this as fast, so take that for what you will. The 12.5 is pretty darn fast on the stimp. Very difficult. Poa annua is just difficult to putt on in general. It's difficult putting inside 15 feet, difficult putting outside 15 feet, and the par 5s are somewhat easy. That's about the only easy portion of the course. If we come down here a little bit more historical numbers around Riv, you're looking at off the tee. It's difficult to gain, difficult good drive percentage. Accuracy here is much less, but it's very not penalizing. I don't know what the word I'm looking for there is. It's very forgiving to be in the rough or to miss the fairway in general around Riv, because Riv is difficult regardless. Approach, hitting the green, difficult. Hitting the green from the fairway, difficult. From the rough, difficult. It's almost impossible from the fairway bunkers. I mean, it's just difficult to hit these greens, despite the fact that they're so large. It's 7,500 square feet. Again, this goes back to what I was telling you, that these greens don't play to their size. There are steep runoffs and contouring, false fronts. Just hitting the green is not enough here at Riviera, because a poor approach shot will get punished. We can see that here. Proximity, quite a bit further away. In general and from rough and fairway. Now, players do go for the green more often around Riv, but they are less successful in birdieing going for the green. So something to keep in mind as you think about some of the players this week. Around the green, actually, even though it said average up here, I believe, stroke scan around the green average, everything around here lends itself to looking easy. Around the green per shot, a little bit easier. Scrambling's easier. Short grass, definitely much easier. Where it gets difficult is the bunkers. The bunkers are incredibly difficult around Riv. Fortunately, only 23% of your around the green shots come from around the green or from the sand. But you can see just how difficult it is. Sand save percentage is much lower. Proximity from the sand is much further away. Very difficult. And then you see the putting here. Very difficult. One putt percentage actually surprisingly is a lot higher. My assumption is that a lot of that is the around the green that players are having to scramble. But you see strokes gained per putting overall much lower. From 0 to 5, from 5 to 15 much lower. Not easy. Everything 3 to 5, 4 to 8, 0 to 10, 5 to 15, all of it. Putting very difficult around Riv. These are generally pretty darn fast greens. If we take a look at average approach shot ranges, you remember Pebble Beach, we had a big focus on the 100 to 150. Not the case here at Riv. We're looking at 150 to 200. About, what is this, 48% of your approach shots, 49% come from 150 to 200, roughly. So these are the two ranges we're going to be looking at in terms of proximity, at least to start our process of thinking about the types of players we want to use and wager this week. A lot from 150 to 200. All right, with that, let's go ahead and we'll go to Fantasy National now and take a look at how Fantasy National looks at Riv. The three easiest scoring opportunities on the course are the par 5s, starting with the first. Plays to 7/10, almost 2/3 of a shot, or excuse me, a little more than 2/3 of a shot under par. An absolute must birdie hole, and eagles do happen quite frequently at 6%. The other par 5s are easy, but not eagle opportunities. The par 5 11th at 583, only a 1.5% eagle rate. Plays to 0.3 of a shot, and then a quarter of a shot under par. And then the drivable par 4 10th plays to about a 10th of a shot under par. Those are your 4 easiest scoring opportunities. So much like what we did with Pebble Beach in terms of going for the green, we're going to be doing a lot of that for Riv as well, because you're going to want to try and take advantage of the short par 4 10th, and you got to take advantage of the par 5s going for the green in 2 on those. Otherwise, the rest of this course is pretty darn difficult. You've got 2/10 of a shot, 2/10 of a shot, 3/10 of a shot, the brute par 4 12th at 479, playing mostly all uphill. Even the 18th, very difficult hole, 2/10 of a shot, quarter of a shot. Bogeys abound around Riviera, especially if you're not on top of your game. But because of the lack of water and really penalty areas around Riv, not a whole lot of double bogeys, just a lot of squares on the scorecard. Not a whole lot of doubles, just a lot of squares that can creep up and bite you if you're not playing well. We take a look at strokes gained by shot type historically here for your top 10s. I'm a little bit surprised, but it's showing that it's a short game course. I would have normally said this is a ball striking course, but the strokes gained don't generally lie. A lot of putting here, a lot of around the green. Hey, good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. You remember when I called out Hitsatsune last week? Didn't get him for first round leader. I will say you looked very intelligent for quite a bit. I don't know what he did today. I know he kind of fell off a little bit, but I mean, at his price point and his ownership, I will give you the credit you deserve, Phil. You were very high on Rio last week. I didn't hate him, but I liked a lot of other players a lot more. But you get the credit for shouting out Rio Hitsatsune, who played very well, at least for the first 3 days around Pebble. Again, I just don't know what he did today. But thanks for jumping in chat, Phil. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully you had a good Pebble Beach Pro-Am, especially if you were playing a lot of Rio. Hopefully you played Showdown with Rio, because that was probably going to be really, really good for you. And then, hopefully we're going to try and keep that success. Finished 8th. Okay, well, I mean, he didn't fall off too bad today. So congratulations, Phil, on a good shout. Hopefully you turned that into positive money and positive success for the entirety of the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Coming back to the course the Riv here at Fantasy National, again, a little bit surprised. A lot of around the green for your top 10s, top 5s. You start to see that it catches up to you. Ball striking, you got to hit your irons well here. Off the tee, actually surpasses around the green for your top 5s. And then for your winners, they're doing a lot of around the green. My assumption is that they're taking advantage of the par 5s. And they're also avoiding some bogeys. But still, the main shot type is approach. It is very difficult to gain off the tee here. So I'm not going to ignore off the tee this week. But I do think we'll need to look at some around the green, considering how often players are going to be having to be tidy around the green. Good evening, Chronic. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Love or hate Morikawa. This has been an awesome start to PGA. I didn't have Morikawa. I had Straka, who gave himself a chance today. But you are right. I've had a couple of winners, or at least I had one winner with Goddard. I've had a couple of placements with Putnam at the American Express. I hit Bridgman's top 10 this week. So it wasn't all for naught this past week at Pebble. We're going to try and keep that momentum moving to the Riv and to the Genesis this week. Thanks for jumping in chat, Chronic. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully you've had some positive success. Did you have Morikawa? We've already had one community member shout out that or let me know that they had the Morikawa outright. So a fantastic hit already. Love to hear that members of the community having success. And it doesn't have to be just with outrights. If you have a very strong DFS performance, let me know. I will make sure to give you the recognition you deserve if you let me know with your success. So yeah, you look at your winners past at Riv, This is what you get. Again, you're going to have to putt well. I still consider this a ball striking course. You're going to have to be very good with your irons. We're not going to ignore around the green, though. Even the best iron players are going to have to rely on their around the green at some point, or around the green game some point throughout the week. Moving to strokes gained by hole by par. No surprise here. With 3 par 5s, professionals are really taking advantage of the par 5s. But the par 3s are lagging behind quite a bit. The par 3s just aren't getting you a whole lot. And that's because they're very difficult. So, 0.2 of a shot here, right at par, which is one of the easier holes on the course, 0.08 over, and right at par. So, really, if you're getting par on your par 3s, you're generally doing okay. Maybe squeeze in a birdie every once in a while. If you par the par 3 fourth 4 days in a row, you're doing excellent, because this is a nasty, difficult par 3, long, difficult par 3. So 4 pars will do you well there. Otherwise, there's really not a whole lot to be gained in these par 3s. Now, your winners are taking advantage of them a little bit, but looking at top 5s and top 10s, it's really about the par 4s here. Par 4s and par 5s, but most professionals are going to take advantage of par 5s. So it really is kind of about the par 4s. See how close they are, especially for your top 10s. Moving to hole composition gives you a good idea at the lay of the land and the style of holes that players are going to have to be pretty darn good at. One very short par 3, couple of mid-lengths, and again, the long, brute par 3 fourth. You do have that drivable par 4 10th. Plays at, 315. Sometimes it can play under 300 if they move tees up. So you do have that one drivable par 4. 4 short par 4s, but that doesn't mean that they're easy. You have 433, one of the tougher holes on the course, 408, 434, 434. So, good mix of gettable and difficult shorter par 4s. Majority, 6 of your 11 par 4s fall from 450 to 500, which again will explain the multitude of 150 to 200 approach shots around Riv. One short par 5. I thought this was long par 4. One short par 5. This is the par 5 first. Generally, a birdie, could be an eagle. If you're parring it, you're losing a lot of shots to the field. And then your other 2 par 5s are over 550. Historic cut line, we do have to worry about this a little bit. This is a Masters cut, meaning top 50 and ties. And I believe anybody within 10 shots, you can feel free to check me on that. But I do believe this is a Masters cut this week, since this is a Tiger Woods hosted event. So generally speaking, looking at the cut, it's generally hovering around +1, +2 when it was an invitational style field. That's pretty difficult. I mean, invitationals in of themselves generally bring in much stronger fields than the normal PGA Tour event, and you're still getting a +2 cut. This course is difficult. It's been as high as +4. It never was under par, at least going back to 2003. So we're looking at a pretty darn difficult test of golf, is what Riv is. We can see that even more here. Driving accuracy, much lower than the average tour event. Greens, much lower. Now, scrambling is a little bit easier around Riv, except for in the sand. But scrambling, generally easier here. 3 putts, much higher than the average tour event. Distance, a little bit lower. A lot of that has to do with some risk reward, obviously, of the par 4 10th. You've got some shorter par 4s that players could decide to be prudent and play 3 woods or irons off the tee for position. So distance is a little bit less here, and proximity is a little bit higher. Again, speaking to the difficulty of these greens. So there is a look at Riviera from a scorecard and graphical view, in addition to how the rabbit hole looks at Riv. So hopefully that's given us a pretty good idea on what we want to look at throughout the week, and we'll start doing that a little bit tonight as part of our, kind of our initial look, or initial review. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the players in the field this week. I am going to skip off the tee for now until, actually, I take that back. Let's take a look at off the tee when gaining off the tee is difficult. We've seen how difficult it is to gain strokes off the tee here at Riviera. So going back to the beginning of last year, when it is difficult or very difficult to gain strokes off the tee, your top off the tee performers have been Rory, Chris Goddard, Scotty, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, Ludwig, Bobby Mack, Rico Hoey, Taylor Pendrith, and Aaron Rai. So no surprise here. A lot of major contenders. Riv is certainly, I don't want to call it the equivalent of a major, but I mean the course is difficult enough that if it wanted to host a major, it could. And you see these players that are, major winners, major contenders. Rory, Grand Slam winner. Scotty, 3-4-time major winner, 5-time major winner, whatever it is. Morikawa's won a couple. Connors is always very consistent, particularly in U.S. Opens when it's very difficult off the tee. Ludwig. So that makes a whole lot of sense there. Let's remove that filter. We said we were going to take a look at a couple of different things here. Let's take a look at, let's do Core Crenshaw, since they had the big renovation in 1999, because Fazio's most recent update was in 2008. So Core Crenshaw, what are these courses? This is Kapalua and the Bay Current. So that's what used to be the Zozo. That's the new course. Yokohama. Let's expand this a little bit. Go 2023. See what that brings in. We've got Bay Current, the Century. 2024's U.S. Open and the Century. It's probably not enough because the Century is not like Riviera. Maybe we don't look at Core and Crenshaw. Instead, let's take a look at Kikuyu fairways, because this is a very interesting surface to try and play from. And is it just Riviera? Yeah, it's just Riviera, of course. That sucks. I wanted a little bit more. There. So instead, we looked at a little bit off the tee. I was going to look at total. Actually, what we can do, let's look at total when scoring is difficult and very difficult. We can do that. When rounds have been difficult or very difficult relative to par, your top total performers in the field this week for the Genesis: Scotty, Rory, Corey Connors, Tommy Fleetwood, Bobby Mack, Harris English, JJ Spawn, Harry Hall, Russell Henley, and Keegan are your top 10 when rounds have been difficult. So definitely give these guys, quite a little bit of a boost, I will say, in your considerations, whether that's in wagers when the odds boards comes out either tonight or tomorrow, your early look at DFS lineups. Generally, when things get difficult, these guys have played the best, and Genesis and Riv is certainly difficult. We'll remove those filters. We're going to look at a lot of iron play. I still think that iron play is going to be a strong factor at who performs well around Riviera. So your top iron players, again, Pebble Beach is not in here yet since it finished a few hours ago. Your top iron players in the field this week so far, early in 2026: Siwoo, Russell Henley, Hideki, J-Day, Justin Rose, Daniel Berger, Corey Connors, Ryan Gerard, Chris Goddard, and JT Poston. We'll look at some around the green. We'll first just look at around the green in general, because you're going to rely on it quite a bit. Your best around the green players early on in 2026: Ben Griffin, JJ Spawn, Sahith Theegala, Hideki, Sepp Straka, Chris Goddard, Minwoo Lee, Ryo Itsatsune, Victor Hovland, and Scotty. And then if we take a look at a little bit more around the green, we could look at like sand saves, because a lot of the difficulty for around the green at Riv is bunker, is sand. So let's take a look at, I don't like sand saves because sand saves include some putting. Let's do sand procs, I guess. Proximity players from the around the green in the sand early this year: Cantley, Scheffler, Batia, Minwoo Lee, Ben Griffin, Brian Campbell, Ricky Fowler, Kurt Kitayama, Garrick Higo, and J-Day. I will expand the time frame all the way back to 2022, because we are going to be looking at putting. And we've got four courses we're going to need to look at. First is Pebble Beach, Riv. I will include Spyglass. We're starting to get some shot link data from Spyglass, so I'll include it. And, of course, Torrey Pines South. These are the courses that have Poa annua listed as their surface type per the GCSAA. So your top putters on Poa annua greens going all the way back to 2022, just to give it enough rounds to be statistically significant. Your top putters in the field this week: Max Homa, no surprise, former champion here at Riv, loves this course. Pearson Coody, Denny McCarthy, Harris English, Matt McNeely, Andrew Novak, Sahith Theegala, Justin Rose, Matt McCarty, and Sami Valimaki are your top 10 in terms of putting on Poa annua. Reset that. Let's take a look at proximity just very, very quickly, and then we'll finish the show off with a little bit of some historical performances here. Very conveniently, 150 to 200. That's the exact range that we want to look at. So your top performers in proximity from 150 to 200 in the field this week at the Genesis. And again, this might change tomorrow after we get Pebble Beach data, or it will change because there's so few rounds. But Victor Hovland, Justin Rose, Harris English, Siwoo, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ryan Gerard, JT Poston, Minwoo, Ryo Itsatsune, and Andrew Novak. All right. To finish the show off this evening, let's go ahead and go to Fantasy National. Take a look at the strokes gained total tab, or tournament history page view in Fantasy National. You'll note that I've got this sorted on 2024. The reason being is that 2023 and back, it was an invitational field, so it had about 110 to 120 players. So not what we're dealing with now. And I'm not looking at 2025 because this was played at Torrey last year. So the only year that we have similar to what we're going to have in 2026 is 2024. Minwoo looks good this week too. Well, we can look and see how Minwoo did in 2024. He did not play here. He did miss the cut at Riv in 2022. Let's take a look at Minwoo Lee in general. If I can figure out where to search by name. Well, it's going to be easier just to search for him now. There's Scott. There he is, Minwoo. Let's see how he's done at the Genesis before. And again, we can't count this 48th. That was last year. So it's only a couple times. Missed the cut in his one try at Riv. So didn't have any historical performance beyond the miscut here in 2022. Minwoo played extremely well at Pebble. I'll be interested to see what the stats look like. Like, did he gain a bunch on the greens? Because if so, I'd be a little bit more wary that he just had a good putting week. Otherwise, if his irons were solid, if the off the tee was solid, I'd be more inclined. Because he is a decent around the green player, generally speaking. Let's see. He was really good around the green in waste management. That's going all the way back to the Open. So the only two events he's played so far, like off the tee, he can handle. He can handle Riv in terms of off the tee. I do worry about the putter though. If he gained a bunch around Pebble, I'd be a little bit more cautious. Yes, it's the same surface, but putting is such a fickle statistic. The guys can have good weeks and then just fall off a cliff. Like Morikawa, not a very good putter. Probably putt pretty well at Pebble. You don't expect that to carry over. So, I'm not 100% sold on Minwoo this week. Was it the 2023 U.S. Open at Riv? I do not believe it was. I don't think so. I could be wrong. In fact, let's go here. This is the quickest way I can go about it. U.S. Open 2023 was at similar. It was at Los Angeles Country Club. So same area of the country, but it wasn't at Riv. I don't think Riv's ever hosted a major. Or if they did, it was a long, long time ago. Let's see. So, like I said, I've got this sorted on 2024. Hideki won that year. But he also had some very poor performances. My guess is that this was a lot of punting based. Who was it that shouted out Turkey? Cantley at the Riv all day. You can see that here. 3 top fives. Or excuse me. I need to stop looking at this first column. 2 top fives. Another top 15. So Cantley's played very well here. No surprise. Xander's played very well here with a top 5 and 2 more top 15s. So looking at 2024, like Hideki played well, Xander, Harris English. This makes a lot of sense for Harris English. A guy that's not going to get the ball away from him. He's not going to hit it as far as some of the other players, but generally keeps the ball in front of him. That's why he won at Torrey. He just keeps the ball in front of him, putts well enough, scrambles well enough. Harris English makes a lot of sense here. As much as I loved Tom Hoge at Pebble this past week, this does not feel like a good fit for Tom Hoge, even though he finished top 10 in 2024. J-Day, I've talked about this the past seemingly month. J-Day just loves POA. He generally plays well on POA. 2 top 10s here at Riv. Sam Burns, Tommy has played well here. I believe it was you, Hanka, that was also asking about Rory. Rory's had some decent success, I would say, at least in the past 4 tries here. Did miss the cut 2021, top 10, top 25. It's not spectacular, but it's not nothing either. Some other players, notable players here. Scotty, doing Scotty things. Max Homa makes all the sense in the world being a California native. Winner in 2021, runner-up 2023, top 10, top 20. Morikawa has played very well around Riv as well. Victor has played extremely well around Riv. So I'll be interested to see what Victor Hovland did at Pebble as well. Because Victor was one of the first names that kind of came to mind this evening when thinking about Riviera. Xander, Mav McNeely. If we take a look at some of the players who have not played Riv very well, Siwoo Kim has really struggled around Riviera. Alex Smalley struggled around Riviera. Adam Shank. Minwoo in his one try. Pendrith. Look at Keegan. Keegan's been really bad, and Keegan had a great Pebble Beach. But Keegan's been really bad around Riv past 4 or so times. Others here, Spawn, not great. Sepp, he's been making cuts here. Does have a top 15, but nothing inspiring. Fitzpatrick has a top 5, but missed the cut a couple times. So, yeah. Again, I'm going to be focused pretty much only on the 2024 Genesis because that was the limited field, limited cut. That's the only time it's been a limited field, limited cut event. Smalley, Shank, Keegan Bradley, Kevin Yu, Spawn, Sepp, Matt Fitzpatrick, Spieth DQ'd, but Spieth also didn't play particularly well the year before that either. P. Rogers, Wyndham Clark. So that's what I have for you all in terms of an initial research show this evening. Again, I apologize if I seem like I'm jumping around a little bit. I'm trying to figure out how I want to organize my shows moving forward with the combination of the Rabbit Hole and with Fantasy National. I got a lot of people to thank. I guess I should say Pluto, Trip, Turkey, Hanka, Echoes, and Phil and Chronic. Wow, a lot of people here for an initial research. I want to thank you all very, very much for jumping in the chat this evening. Very much appreciated. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. I did hit a top 10 on Bridgman. Would have been a lot better week had Tom Hoagie finished one shot better and gotten inside the top 10. Had a little bit of a flirt there with Sepp Straka. But we're going to try and keep the positive momentum rolling early on in this season as we look forward this week to the Genesis. So thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you made this past week for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, for all the DFS contests you played this past week for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.